welcome to the Deep Dive. You're keen to quickly get a solid handle on health, safety, and environment, or HSE culture in organizations, right?
That's the goal.
And you've shared this document, Safety Culture 5-Step Ladder.pdf, to help us do just that. So instead of folks wading through dense reports, we're going to pull out the key insights here.
Exactly. Think of this as your express route to understanding what makes some organizations genuinely safe and others maybe not so much.
Okay.
Our mission in this deep dive is basically to define HSE culture, nail down why it's so important, and sort of trace how it grows, how it matures within a company. And yeah, all based on this safety culture 5-step ladder source.
Absolutely. We're not just summarizing, are we? We're really digging into what this document tells us about the different ways companies approach safety. This framework seems key to seeing the stages they go through.
It really is.
So let's kick off.
Yeah.
What exactly is HSE culture, in simple terms?
Well, in essence, HSE culture is, as the document puts it quite nicely, the way we do things around here, specifically when it comes to health, safety, and the environment.
Okay, the way we do things.
Yeah, it's the unwritten rules, the attitudes, the beliefs that really shape how people act regarding HSE day to day. And what's interesting is that it's often deeper than the formal stuff, the policies, the procedures, the HSE management system itself.
So it's definitely more than just having a safety manual sitting on a shelf somewhere.
Precisely. An organization might have, a really comprehensive HSE management system on paper, but if the people, the workforce, aren't truly bought in, if the underlying culture doesn't support it,
Then it doesn't work.
well, it won't deliver its full potential, let's say. HSE culture is about the actual behaviors you see, the shared beliefs, and crucially, that sort of collective drive to want to improve safety, even if it means going beyond what the rules strictly require.
Okay, I think I'm getting a clearer picture now. So what would you say are the signs, the hallmarks of a strong HSE culture? What does that look like on the ground?
Right. The document points out several key things. In a really healthy HSE culture, safety isn't just like a priority, it's a core value. It genuinely guides decisions, actions at every level.
A core value.
Yeah. And people are consistently aware, alert to their surroundings, looking out for potential hazards. They really understand their specific role, their HSE responsibilities. And this is critical. There's a real openness to new ideas, to suggestions for improvement. People feel safe suggesting things. And tied to that is this shared belief that, yes, my actions actually do matter. They make a difference to safety overall.
That makes a lot of sense. You can have endless rules, but without that underlying commitment, that belief.
They're just words on paper. Exactly.
Now, the document introduces this idea of an HSE culture ladder. Can you walk us through that concept?
Yeah, this ladder model is, I think, really useful. It helps understand how HSE culture evolves, how it matures in an organization. It basically lays out 5 distinct stages, each representing a higher level of maturity.
5 stages.
They are pathological, reactive, calculative, proactive, and generative.
Those names are quite descriptive. Let's start at the bottom then. What's this pathological level all about?
At the pathological level, the document highlights a pretty grim attitude, summarized as, who cares as long as we're not caught?
Oof.
Yeah. Information about HSE is kept really tight, often only shared when something bad happens. There's just a fundamental lack of trust, very little accountability. The key insight here isn't just the bad attitude, it's that this whole environment actively stops open communication. It stops learning from mistakes.
That paints a pretty bleak picture, yeah. What's the next step up from that?
That's the reactive level. So
Yeah.
here the organization does acknowledge that safety is important, but the key phrase is, we do a lot every time we have an accident.
So action follows incidents.
Exactly. There's recognition, yes, but the action is mainly triggered by accidents or incidents. It's about responding after something's gone wrong, rather than, actively trying to prevent things in the first place.
Right.
The takeaway here is that resources and effort often get channeled into reacting to failures, rather than investing upfront in measures that could stop them happening at all.
So they're busy, but maybe busy looking backward instead of forward. What about the calculative stage then?
Moving up, we get to calculative. The thinking here shifts to, we have systems in place to manage all hazards. So there's a definite emphasis on setting up HSE management systems, defining procedures, setting targets, collecting data. It's all very systematic.
Sounds more organized.
It is, but the document points out a potential pitfall. These systems can sometimes exist, kind of ticking along, without genuine buy-in from the workforce.
Ah, okay.
The insight is that just having procedures and systems doesn't automatically mean you have a strong safety culture. You need that engagement, that active participation from everyone for it to really work.
Right, so you could tick all the boxes on the checklist, but still miss that crucial human element, that feeling of shared responsibility.
Precisely.
What comes after calculative?
Next up is the proactive level. And this represents quite a significant shift in mindset, actually. The driving principle becomes safety leadership and values drive continuous improvement.
Okay, leadership is key here.
Very much so. There's a much stronger focus on preventing incidents before they even have a chance to happen. You see leaders actively championing safety, really embedding it as a core value throughout the whole organization. The key takeaway is that this leadership engagement is really the catalyst. It's what moves an organization beyond just managing risks to actively, proactively preventing them.
That definitely sounds like a more effective and probably more sustainable approach. And the top level, the highest rung, is generative.
Yes, generative. This is the most mature state. Here, HSE is how we do business around here. It's not separate. It's completely woven into everything the organization does.
Integrate.
Fully integrated. Information, good and bad news, flows freely. There's a very high degree of trust and accountability up, down, across the board. And there's this collective commitment, not just to maintain safety, but to constantly look for ways to make things even better.
Wow.
The core insight here is that when safety is truly part of the business fabric, it actually becomes a driver of efficiency, of overall excellence. It's not seen as a cost center or a drag on operations anymore.
That's fascinating. Seeing that whole evolution laid out, pathological, reactive, calculative, proactive, generative. You can really track how things like information sharing, trust, accountability, they all increase as you move up.
Exactly. It gives you a framework.
Yeah, it makes you think about organizations, where they might sort of fit on that ladder. Now, the document also mentions these organizational characteristics and cultural dimensions. What do those add to the picture?
Right. So the document outlines 23 specific dimensions. Think of these as different facets of the organization's culture. They provide a much more detailed way to see how the culture shows up at each of those 5 ladder levels.
Granular.
Exactly. More granular. For instance, take how is HSE communicated? In a pathological culture, maybe managers just tell workers, don't cause problems, and people are afraid to speak up. Contrast that with a generative culture. There you'd see rapid, open sharing of news, good and bad. Communication is relevant, it's engaging. You can immediately see how that difference reflects a fundamentally different underlying culture, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It makes the differences really tangible. Give us another example.
Okay, how about how do leaders show care for the workforce? At the pathological end, you might see very little visible concern for people's well-being. But in a generative organization, leaders are genuinely passionate about safety. Their actions demonstrate care. When concerns are raised, they're not just listened to, they're acted upon. It shows that a strong safety culture isn't just rules, it's rooted in, well, genuine human concern.
Definitely. It brings that why of safety into focus. What about, say, how safe behavior is recognized?
Yeah.
Or rewarded?
Good one. In a pathological environment, doing the right thing safety-wise might just go unnoticed. Or worse, raising a safety issue could actually have negative consequences for you.
Oh, dear.
Yeah. Conversely, in a generative culture, safe practice is just the expected norm, and demonstrative excellent safety leadership might even be necessary for getting promoted. It shows how the value of safety gets properly embedded in the organization's incentive and progression systems.
That's a really powerful way to reinforce what's important.
Yeah.
Okay, what about how organizations understand why incidents happen? The cause.
Right, pathological level. Incidents are often just written off as unavoidable, bad luck, or blamed on reckless individuals. Simple explanations.
Blame culture.
Very much so. But as you move towards generative, the understanding becomes much more sophisticated, more systems-based. The whole system is looked at. Managers start to understand their own role in potentially creating the conditions that led to the incident. That shift from blaming people to understanding the system is absolutely crucial for learning and preventing it happening again.
Key distinction, yeah. Blaming shuts down learning, doesn't it?
Right.
Whereas looking at the system opens it up. Okay, let's touch on consequences for not following the rules. Non-compliance.
Sure. Pathological culture. Rules might be there, but maybe they're not consistently enforced. Discipline might only happen after something serious goes wrong.
Inconsistent.
Very. Contrast that with generative. There are clear, fair consequences for noncompliance, absolutely. But, and this is important, an instance of noncompliance is also seen as a signal that there might be a gap or a weakness in the system that needs fixing. The individuals involved are often part of finding that fix. It's about learning and improving, not just punishment.
Right, turning it into a learning opportunity. What about when someone actually spots something unsafe? How willing are people to step in?
Big differences here, too. Pathological. People might only intervene if it's incredibly dangerous right in front of them. There might even be pressure not to report things, to hide unsafe practices from colleagues or managers.
Wow.
But in a generative culture, because safety is so proactive and ingrained, intervention is actually rarely needed. But when it is, maybe someone spots something overlooked, it's always welcomed. It's seen as a chance for everyone to learn and improve together. That really speaks volumes about the trust and the shared responsibility, doesn't it?
It really does, the power of an engaged workforce.
Okay, quick one.
The overall priority given to operational safety.
Pathological. Production and cost are often the only real priorities. Safety is seen purely as a cost, something that gets in the way. Generative. Safety is an unquestioned core value. It's understood that business excellence and safety excellence go hand in hand. You achieve them through the same kinds of rigorous, disciplined actions. Safety isn't a trade-off. It's fundamental to success.
Such a fundamental shift in perspective.
Yeah.
What about the HSE department itself, its role?
Pathological setting.
Right.
The HSE department often has little power, maybe gets called in only after an incident, reactive.
Just the safety police?
Kind of, yeah. But in a generative organization, the HSE team is a vital partner. They provide expertise, coaching, specialist support to the operational managers. They have equal status with other key departments. It's a genuine collaboration for safety.
Okay. And making sure people are competent, training and skills.
Pathological, often just doing the bare minimum legally required training, tick the box.
Right.
Generative. Competency is seen as an ongoing process. It's proactive. Individuals are even encouraged to identify their own learning needs, looking beyond just their immediate job requirements. It reflects that deep commitment to continuous learning.
How about something really everyday, like meetings? Is HSE even discussed?
Pathological.
Yeah.
Often not on the agenda. Maybe seen as a waste of time. Takes away from real work. Generative. Meetings actually foster a learning atmosphere. HSE is actively discussed, but the focus is on improvement, anticipating potential problems, sharing lessons learned. It's just part of the normal business rhythm.
Woven into the fabric, like you said. When planning work, how's risk handled?
Pathological. Might be as basic as wear your PPE, read the poster, or look out for yourself. Very individualistic, maybe superficial.
Not much of a process.
Not really. Generative. There's a well-understood, robust risk assessment process that everyone trusts. The workforce is actively involved, trusted to plan effectively, and those processes are constantly reviewed and improved.
Okay, and one last dimension example. How do they know there are critical safety barriers, the things preventing major accidents, are actually working?
Pathological. Maybe just doing enough to get away with it. Managers might not ask too many awkward questions as long as production keeps going.
Head in the sand.
A bit, perhaps. Generative. The effectiveness of those critical barriers is constantly, rigorously monitored. They use leading indicators, measuring things proactively as well as lagging ones. And the results are always challenged, questioned, to make sure they're really reflecting reality. No complacency.
These examples really do bring those 5 levels to life, don't they? You can see how looking at these different dimensions gives such a richer understanding of where an organization truly is with its safety culture, way beyond just reading their policy documents.
Exactly. It's about observing the reality.
And the document also puts a lot of emphasis on the role of leadership behavior.
Yes, this is absolutely critical. A cornerstone, really, for shaping the culture. The document introduces these quite powerful I statements. They reflect typical thoughts or behaviors of leaders and supervisors grouped into 4 areas: walking the talk, informedness, trust, and priorities.
I statements.
Yeah. And they're powerful because they illustrate so clearly how everyday actions, everyday communications, or even the lack of communication from leaders directly shapes the culture that people experience on the ground.
Can you give us a quick example? How might an I statement differ between, say, a pathological leader and a generative one?
Sure. Okay. Under walking the talk, a leader in a more pathological culture might think something like, well, I accept that injuries are just unavoidable in this line of work. It's kind of resigned. Now, contrast that with a leader in a generative culture. Their internal statement might be, I am meticulous about doing what I say I'll do, and I insist that our standards are always met. You immediately feel the difference in accountability and
Oh, yeah,
commitment.
huge difference, yeah.
Or take priorities. A leader in a less mature culture might think, look, I need to meet my financial targets, HSE targets. Well, that's someone else's problem.
Pass the buck.
Whereas a leader in a more mature, generative culture would firmly believe, I will not allow business decisions to be made without properly considering the HSE implications first.
Those are really revealing contrasts. It just hammers home how much leadership really sets the tone for the entire culture.
Absolutely, it does. And these I statements, they're designed to be used as a tool for self-reflection, for leaders and supervisors to look at honestly and think, okay, which of these resonate most with my behavior?
Hold up a mirror.
Exactly. Hold up a mirror. And then consider what kind of culture is that behavior creating, maybe even unintentionally. It prompts them to identify specific concrete changes they can make in how they act and communicate to start shifting the culture towards a more mature, safer state.
So it sounds like a very practical, actionable way to actually drive that culture improvement. The document even mentions a workshop structure using these statements.
That's right. The idea is to get leaders and supervisors together, use these I statements to spark discussion, help them identify where they currently sit, culturally speaking, based on their behaviors, and then, crucially, develop a real plan, like a 90-day plan for adopting specific new behaviors that will start to build a stronger safety culture. The focus is very much on tangible, leadership-driven change.
This has been really, really insightful. A proper deep dive into this safety culture five-step ladder document. If we were to sort of boil it down, what are the main takeaways you'd want someone listening to remember?
Okay, well, the absolute core message is that a strong HSE culture is fundamental. You can't achieve really outstanding world-class safety performance without it. It goes way beyond just having systems on paper.
It needs that commitment.
It needs genuine commitment, active engagement from absolutely everyone. We've seen how culture evolves through those 5 stages, pathological right up to generative, and how it's so deeply shaped by what leaders do and say. And also by how all those different organizational aspects we talked about, communication, incident learning, planning, maintenance, how they're actually handled in practice. The critical insight, I think, is that a mature safety culture isn't just about avoiding accidents. It's about creating a mindset of continuous improvement, making safety truly integral to how the business runs. And when you do that, it actually leads to better efficiency, better overall performance, too.
And understanding those levels, those 23 dimensions we touched on, that provides a really valuable lens, doesn't it, for
Yeah.
looking at an organization.
Precisely. It gives organizations a structured way to assess, okay, where are we really on this ladder? And then pinpoint specific areas where they can target improvements. Hopefully, this deep dive has given our listeners a clear and useful understanding of this whole complex topic, some practical insights, without being totally overwhelming.
Absolutely. So maybe a final thought for everyone listening. As you go about your day, maybe think about organizations, perhaps even where you work. Where do you think they sit on that HSE culture ladder? And maybe more importantly, what small changes in behavior, especially from leaders, could start nudging that culture in a better direction?
That's a great takeaway question.
And if you do want to explore more, the document itself mentions resources like the Energy Institute's Hearts and Minds Toolkit, which are freely available. Lots more to dig into there. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.